Hello, friends, and welcome to the Gathering Place, where we offer hope as we discuss spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. My name is Ken Shelton, and tonight I am your announcer and host, along with my good friends Ben and Taylora Bookie. Tonight, we are going to be sharing with you some of our favorite books, and we are asking you to consider them for part of your summer reading list. We all know that the whole world reads during the summer. Well, probably not, just a few of you. But if you don't read during the summer, it's a good time to start. And we have some books to suggest to you. So we've each compiled a list of books that are very important to us. And we're going to take some time tonight to go through one for each of us. And we might do a little bit more as time goes on if we have enough time tonight or perhaps next week. But we feel strongly about reading and education, and we feel strongly about sharing all of that with you. It's very inspiring. And so Ben is going to lead us off tonight with his list of books and then his favorite book, and share a little bit from an educational point of view. Ben?
All right. So, Ken told us to stick to three. I came up with four. Tom, who's not here, came up with like 20. I don't know how many were on his list. But I think so. Taylora is the only one that actually stuck to three. So,
Old directions.
but I picked a little bit of different. Each of the one's a different category of book, I guess is the way to put it. And if you know me, you know I'm usually reading multiple books at one time. Always kind of done that, I guess. But so I'm usually reading something really easy to read, kind of like I like cozy mysteries. It's usually like for women, but like I like cozy mysteries. They're like, fun, but nothing graphic in them. Just usually easy to read. But that is not one of the books I'm going to recommend. But I'm always reading usually something from theology, something from counseling. I like history. I didn't put any history books on this one either. But if we do this again, we probably will get a history book. So, but I do have, I lost the main book. So I do have this book called Broken Like Me, an insider's toolkit for mending broken people. This is by Joseph Reed, R-E-I-D. And I actually met him at the men's conference I went to about a month ago. And he has a journalist you can get to, and a workbook actually that is designed for incarcerated individuals. But this is not just for people in prison, so don't let that throw you off. But really good book. So there's that one, and then there's this book called The Year of Jubilee by Cindy Morgan. That real slowly. Some of you, if you've listened to Christian music, particularly in the 90s, and know her as a singer, which she still does record music. But this is her first novel. She's written a couple of nonfiction books. So that one was really good. And then a classic, which cover is not has a name on it, but the lining does. So Fathers and Sons. So I looked up actually how to say this in Russian, and then I forgot, but it looks like Ivan Turgenev, but it's actually even can't remember now. Turgenev, something I don't know. Anyway, one of my favorite books of all time. So,
Do you know Ken? Does Ken know how to say?
No, you're good. I don't know the name. No.
So
I was going to make a joke, but I'm using self-control.
good job.
So proud of you.
So, but the one I actually wanted to talk just really briefly about is this book called Uncomfortable by Brett McCracken. So, and it's subtitled The Awkward and Essential Challenge of Christian Community.
Mm.
And so which, the reason I actually chose that one today is just because this is what we're doing in part on here is this is Christian community, very, very different. But he's really talking about why we need that. And because, and we see this a lot, I think people looking for that perfect church that believes everything exactly as they do and does everything exactly as they want it done. And where they don't have to deal with difficult people or difficult sermons or anything like that. That probably doesn't exist, but so he goes into a lot, and I'm just going to kind of go through some of the things, just the table of contents, just so you can hear the topics that he covers. But really, really, really good book. He starts out actually talking about his dream church. That's his introduction, like what he would envision as being, the perfect church for him, right? And but he talks about uncomfortable faith and how we embrace discomfort. But then he talks about things like, the cross, holiness, truths, love, the uncomfortable comforter, which is interesting, the uncomfortable mission. And when we, in this, when we're living out our faith, it should make us uncomfortable. We should encounter truths that don't feel good to us because we're not living up to them. We should, encounter this ideas about holiness that make us uncomfortable because we don't meet those. And then he talks about church, and guess what? You go to church, there's people you don't like. There might be diversity you don't like. We tend to congregate even in church, right, with people who are just like us. And so sometimes we find discomfort when there's things that are different. He talks about uncomfortable worship, which is a hot topic a lot of times in churches, right? Piano and organ or a full band. Should it be all hymns or just new music? And so, but and is that even what it's about? Because it's more than just the music that is part of worship, but that's what we make it. And so when we get into true worship, I don't have to like the music to be worshiping. And some people are really uncomfortable with that. Uncomfortable authority. What if you don't like the pastor? Right? Uncomfortable unity, uncomfortable commitment, and then countercultural comfort. What does real comfort, real biblical comfort look like? Not what our society says it is or what we necessarily want it to be, but what does true comfort actually look like in the church? And so excellent book. So I was actually thinking about doing it for our small group at church, and may still do that at some point. But so those are my 4 summer reading list books for you. And then of course, just talking about that one that I'm, guess the one I'm pushing today. But so other than that, just talking about reading, you may not know this. I was an English education major for a while in my undergrad, got through student teaching, decided, I was a psychology major too. So psychology was more my field. I enjoy teaching. I do a lot of teaching, but just not in a classroom. So, so to me, reading, of course, is obviously important. I've always been a reader. And, and so we read partly for education. And so that's what I'm going to talk about, just why we read. And, we're blessed in our day and age, right? Like when you read the Old Testament, the people like would gather to hear, the scripture read, right? So I got this huge, thick, heavy book, Bible here, but the people
It always means if your Bible's thicker and bigger, means you're more spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a false piece of education today. But
nice try.
Thanks.
Yeah. So if only that were true, right? But but the people like they had to gather and remember in was it Nehemiah? Now I'm forgetting. I should have looked it up first, but or Ezra, was it Ezra or Nehemiah where they stood and listened for hours to the law being read?
Oh, that was
And
Ezra. Yeah.
that was Ezra, right?
Nehemiah built the wall and Ezra gave
Yeah,
the law.
yeah. So like they stood for and they kept wanting to hear more, right? And
You know,
and
break in a second. You know what that
yep.
reminds me of? It reminds me of this book, Guys from Space, which is a kid's book and it's just a big spoof. But aliens come down and the humans take them to a root beer stand. Anyways, when I hear about Ezra reading to the people and declaring the law, and then the people tell us more, I just hear in the background that goofy guy in that book saying, "Take us to your leader." Okay, back to you. Sorry.
So, but like reading is important just for education. Like we need to know, right? How will you know if you can't hear it or learn it or read it? In our society, of course, like I said, we're blessed because we have such easy access to things to read, and um, and so and you can learn anything, right? And so when I was thinking about it, I was almost going to get political and talk about book banning, but uh, but I didn't. So, but we do have access to that. We have that, and yeah, I mean, we read scripture to learn, to be educated about it. But that's not the end of it, right? I mean, you could know this front to back and not have it change your life. A lot of people know this. Paul knew, right? Remember Paul? He was like way up there. You know, he was the great. He knew everything in the Old Testament, right? Better than anybody else, and zealously lived it out, yet missed it, right? So just knowing it doesn't mean that, right, it's changed your life. When he was still Saul, clearly, like we see that. If sometimes I wonder if that's why God really picked Saul to become Paul, because he was so learned, he knew everything, he was so well educated, and it sent him down the wrong path, which is not an excuse not to be educated, which some people actually believe. It's a whole thing in churches. There are churches like that. If you're educated, you're immediately suspect. That is, not biblical. But, and if you want to know why, you have to tell you more. But yeah, like I mean, God gave us this gift, in our world today, to be able to read and to be educated, even on anything we want. Obviously, probably some people even watching this might be in countries where they don't have as many freedoms as we do in the United States. And they're really, been occasional true book bans, which can only happen by the government, by the way. But but we can access any book we want pretty much, and learn. And so, but wisdom, which follows knowledge, or hopefully does, right? Comes from all of our learning, and hopefully we use it to become wise. And but also just I like to learn, right? I said early when I started this, right? Like I'm usually reading multiple books. I like learning. I didn't recommend a history book, but I am reading several different books right now on history, and I enjoy it. Right? It's part of, and then, sometimes we even get to go to visit those places that I read about, and that's
Nice. Very
really
nice.
cool too. So
Thank
here,
you.
that's my spiel.
That was great. Thank you. Uh, I think I'll skip around this time and just go to Taylora and ask her to share her three books. She was such an honest and honorable student, had only selected three books. She should win a prize, and the prize today is she gets to go next. So, Taylora.
So I want to start off because I just want to piggyback on a few things that Ben was saying. I actually thought about Paul too, because I'm going to talk a little bit about empathy, and you'll probably find that in my reading. But Paul in his writings, you see how he really connected with the people. And he shared like some of his struggles because he was inviting them into the person that he was. He's like, I was shipwrecked. I was, he's telling all these things so that the people that were shipwrecked, they're like, yeah, I connect with that. So I like that about Paul because Paul showed us so much education. He showed us how he was so zealous in his beliefs. And then coming around his connections. So I really like that. And I think too, we do read for empathy. That's why there's so many books that people have written, their biographies, or even some self-help books that just really connect with us. The Whispers in the Pew and that's not what I'm sharing today, but that was a book that people could read and that have maybe had the struggles in church with mental health. And they are like, oh, okay, that's me. And through that, we learn how to develop empathy, how we can connect to people, how we can also look at perspective and see that there's so much more out there. There's so many things that people have been through that we're like, okay, I understand that. I understand why you're going through that. Or why you made the decisions you did. And it also gives us help so that we can learn how to overcome some of the things that we're going through and maybe a place of healing. So reading's good. I don't know if my grammar's not good, but reading's good. So my first book I'm going to share, I'm actually doing audibles and can't see it, so I'm on the second book, and it's called Snow Ridge Mysteries, the complete series, a small town murder mystery box set. It's by Emily, and I like it. It's light reading. It helps your brain to kind of think a little bit about the who done it, who did it, and so I like that. I've been reading a lot more mysteries. I was reading a lot of supernatural stuff and kind of shifted into just murder mysteries. My second book, and that was a book series, so if you want to count that as more, feel free to do so. My second book is called Enough, and it's by Ben Daly and Travis Hall. It says Enough, Living a Life Beyond Performance. I really liked Travis Hall's first book, which was 7 Deadly Thoughts. And we went through with our church. They actually went through this as a connect group, which I was a part of. But he just kind of talks about that struggle with trying to work towards being enough, right? We get that work mindset when God's saying, you are enough, and I love you. So that's another book. And then my third book, and so this is the one I really like, is Raised to Stay. And I think you actually have it as well, don't you?
No, I don't have it.
Okay.
No,
Oh,
I'm aware.
It's by Natalie Runyon. It's preserving in ministry when you have a million reasons to walk away. And I felt connection to Natalie Runyon because I was raised in the church. I've had church hurt, and but it's still, at some point in my life I did walk away from church, but this helped me and kind of bring some healing too. I've had a lot of struggles with some of those thoughts about leadership or about feeling attacked and those kind of things, and she just kind of addresses it, like what she went through. And so I definitely feel it's an empathy book too. So yeah, I'm not gonna read to you like Ben did, but it was a good book. I know Ben would be like, and then but it's a good book. So I recommend. She also has on Audibles and she has a podcast, and I follow her on Instagram and Facebook. She's very relational. So that's it.
Very, very good. So we do read for education and we do read for empathy. We may not know that we read for empathy, but empathy is one of the most immediate byproducts of reading because we bring our whole selves to the story.
Yeah.
And by bringing our whole selves to the story, we put ourselves in the place of those characters. Well, when I'm finished reading a novel, I feel like I have a personal relationship with the characters. And then sometimes I'll just be driving down the road and I'll think, wonder whatever happened to Jacob. It's like a book I read 4 years ago, wonder if they're going to write another book about him. But anyway, it's just something that I do, and you may as well. But we do read for empathy, and we understand struggle, and we see how people work through things. And then we say to ourselves, what would I do? Well, I don't know what I would do. It's a hypothetical. So anyway, thank you, Taylora. And Ben, I have a question. What was it that drew you to English? Was it grammar and punctuation? Was it literature, or was it creative writing?
It definitely was not creative writing. That was my biggest struggle in college. Um, but I love grammar.
Yeah,
Love it. Love
right
it.
here, another grammar king. Come on, let's edit.
Right.
I
So,
want to tell you this. I feel like it was a setup because I didn't realize my grammar was so poor until I met Ben, who said, "Did you see it or did you saw it?" And I said, "I did both. I seen and saw it."
I've seen it. That's right. Or as my relatives used to say, I sort it. Anyway.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, very
Yeah.
okay. So I'm going to talk about uh, not education and not empathy, but something that might, sound questionable in your minds. I'm going to talk about escape. Sometimes the church has been accused of being just an escapist philosophy or idea. Uh, some may use it for that, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about escape as entertainment. I'm talking about the need to forget about all the stuff that's going on in our world, in our lives. We talked about that last week, but some of the pressures and stresses, we don't function well under stress. And sometimes we need to escape and get into a science fiction book or a murder mystery. There's so many books, so many different genres, so many different styles of writing. And, the way that books work is, as you know, I might be preaching to the choir. Some of you maybe would want to be on this podcast. And if you would, you need to let us know. But uh, the thing about it is that when I read an escape oriented book, and that's just a term I came up with, something that makes me feel like I want to be where they are. I I get ideas. I get ideas. Now I love to write. I love to write in my journal. I love to write articles. I enjoy doing all that. I've written 2 books. I enjoyed that process. Took me forever to get through them. But man, was it cathartic. It was so good. And so I tend to like memoir, which is different than autobiography because memoir is your life as story. You're telling um, specific accounts of your life in almost a story form. It's your story. You get to tell it. Your story belongs to you. You own it. So if you don't tell it, other people will tell it, but they'll tell it from a skewed perspective. But my books today, I'm not as good as Ben and Taylora. I'm not going to show you the covers. I'm just going to tell you about my books. The first one is called Gilead. It's the first book in a series of books written by Marilynne Robinson. And some of you perhaps have read it. It is a recounting of the story of the prodigal son and at that time, a contemporary character and a family. So imagine well, let's just imagine it's a modern family and everybody does well except for one son. And then there's dad, and dad has expectations, but at the same time, his biggest expectation is that he has the one son who doesn't really respond to all the family values, and dad wants that one more than anyone else. And so what a great book it is. And it's followed by a number of other books that surround that theme. So I definitely would suggest it. You will escape and you will grow in empathy and you will learn a lot as well. The second is by Brene Brown, who is a researcher who researches shame. And also she researches vulnerability and allowing ourselves to be open and transparent as we address shame. She has a book called I Thought It Was Just Me, in which she suggests that she, like so many other people, felt that she was not perfect enough. And we've been talking about the house of mirrors and social media, the sense of perfection that we'll never live up to. And that's really what that book is about. But it gives a lot of really, I mean, first of all, she's a really great writer. And she has a lot of great one-liners that you can sink your teeth into. And you come away from her writing, at least I did, thinking, I have a new best friend. You know, she's just really good. The third book that I want to present to you is written by Eugene Peterson. And of course, he is the author of the paraphrase, The Message. Now, some people would say it's a paraphrase. Some would say it's a translation. I think if you've done enough work for a paraphrase, you probably can translate. Eugene Peterson was a tremendous scholar, was a Presbyterian minister, raised in a Pentecostal home in North Dakota, but got himself educated. And in so doing, he decided that that was the track he was going to follow. And he, by studying Greek and Hebrew, ancient civilizations, was able to translate the Bible into the Message in everyday vernacular. So it's a little bit different. So his book he's written a lot of books, but my favorite of his is A Long Obedience in the Same Direction, which is actually a quote borrowed from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And so in writing that passage, he borrows it for the ascending Psalms, Psalm 120 through 134, which were songs that David wrote and included in the songbook we know as the Psalms. And he included it for the pilgrims who would come to Jerusalem for the 3 required feast days of the children of Israel. And so they would sing these songs. He gave them traveling music. And the caissons keep rolling, you know, whatever it is, you know, whatever. It's a song that never ends. You know, we do well singing as we go, right? And that's what he gave them, and they're beautiful. And he tells the story of Psalm 121 and what it means to see the hills and what they really mean to him. So I definitely encourage that. The next one, we won't have enough time for me to tell you my favorite one because they're all my favorite ones, and we're running out of time. And I don't want to blank out like we did last week. The next one is by a great Christian philosopher who died recently, and his name is Dallas Willard. And the name of the book is The Divine Conspiracy. Hands down, one of my all-time favorite books about the Christian life. Did you guys read it? Wasn't it great?
I know him. I know
we have it.
We have it.
Yeah, what a
I can
great,
read
oh
it.
my
I
God.
can read.
The way he describes the heavens and the message of the kingdom of the heavens is at hand, and he described it at his fingertips, and the world that is alive all around us that we cannot see. I can't go on. I don't have time. And then there is Please Understand Me. It's a book about temperament, character, and intelligence. And it's really, there are 2 volumes at least, and it is another version of a personality test, essentially. But in it, he describes, he takes the personalities, the Myers-Briggs personality assessment, and he gives them different names, and then he describes what he means by them. And when you find yourself on his assessment and you go back and you read about your personality, you think he's known you your whole life. He'll tell you where your back hurts. I'm not joking. That guy is crazy. Okay. The next book that I loved was Just Mercy, which some of you might have seen, a Netflix or Prime movie. It's made this last couple of years. Brian Stevenson is a civil rights lawyer and takes on a case of a person who was wrongly imprisoned, and nobody wanted to deal with it. It's not like a novel. It's not like a Grisham novel. It's a real, true story, and it's gritty and it's important. And I encourage you to read it because it will redefine mercy for you. And the final one is probably the best book in the world. It's the one I wrote called Covenant.
I've actually read that. It's
Yeah.
good.
Covenant Talk, Words That Set Us Free. And it started out as essays, 10 essays. I picked words, everyday words from the Bible that meant something to me, and in describing God's world and the work of regeneration in our lives. And it became apparent to me while I was writing those essays, just for my own pleasure. I know that sounds weird, right? It turned into a book because they all had the same theme, and that is covenant. And so I write about the covenant talk. And there are 10 chapters, 10 words, and I take you on vacation with me, although I don't tell you that. I take you into my personal life. I take you into my family's home of origin. I take you into a lot of places. I take you to my baptism site. But I also take you to Yosemite Valley and John Muir's first description and understanding of Yosemite. And so you can find all of those books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can find my book there, all of them. And I'm going to wind it up now because we're running out of time. Ben and Taylora, I just appreciate you two so much. And I'm so glad we do this together. It's such a treat for me. And I miss Tom tonight. Tom is usually with us, but he's vacationing in Florida. Somebody always has to be in Florida. Anyway, we miss you, Tom. Anyway, you'll be back next week, I hope. And for those of you who've watched tonight, I just really, really hope that you'll take to heart some of the things that we have shared tonight. And we're going to post our summer reading lists on both Facebook and YouTube so that you can search those books out, find them, and perhaps borrow them from your library. Or like Taylora said, you can just listen to them. I listen to books on Audible and I read my Kindle, but I just read another Pat Conroy book that I had read before. It's like 600 pages. And it's one of those that if you fall asleep reading it, you will have a black eye. And so I read it at night, but I did not get a black eye because I did not let it fall on my face because I couldn't put it down is really what it amounted to. So thank you all for watching. We wish you all the best. You can send us your prayer requests, your comments, your thoughts, your favorite books, and why they're your favorite books. And God bless you. Just God bless you for being here with us at Facebook, YouTube, and we hope to see you again next Sunday. See ya. Bye-bye.